Is influencing actually hard? I saw this video like roasting influencers. What is your opinion on this? Like,
Oh God. Influencers are probably gonna come for me for saying this, but like, be completely honest, not rocket science. I shouldn't have to like threaten you
no.
to pay me.
Why am I always chasing these brands down? Like being like, hello? It's time to get loud. Welcome back to Loud Talk with Lavi, a podcast where we break down the walls of beauty standards one flaw at a time. And today I have such a special guest, Rachel Wiseman. Thank you so much for joining me on Loud Talk today.
Of course, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to chat and just, discuss some things.
Yeah, so the reason I was so excited to have Rachel on is because she kind of takes on that double life that I often talk about here on social media of, working like a traditional job, a traditional 9 to 5 job, and also doing influencing on the side of that. You don't see it very often, but it does happen. I'm so excited to meet another person who's also doing it. So with that being said, I know a little bit about you just from following you on social media and stuff, but I really want to know, like, how did you get into content creating in the first place?
Yeah, it kind of, I guess, like all stems from I grew up dancing competitively, so that's how I kind
Okay.
of like got into makeup and exposed to makeup in the first place. Because when you're like 8 and 9 as a competitive dancer, you have to do like the whole
A
stage
ton of
makeup, fake
makeup.
eyelashes, yeah, like the whole thing. So that's why I like even just got into makeup in the first place. And I have a twin sister who I grew up with, and we danced together as well. But she and a lot of my friends just like hated makeup, and it was like
Okay.
an annoyance to do, and I loved it. So like I ended up like doing everyone's makeup, and like I love matching it to costumes and stuff. And like I would never was like licensed or anything or did anything super professional, but I would do people's prom makeup in high school just for
Hmm.
fun. It was kind of like a hobby and something that I really enjoyed. And the content part didn't really come in until probably I think it was the beginning of my third year of university. So
Okay.
coming up on 2 years ago-ish. I think I posted my first video in like October of 2021, which is crazy. It doesn't seem like that long ago.
And what like
But
influenced that for you to be like, okay, I'm gonna
yeah,
post on TikTok?
yeah, so I have a friend, one of my best friends growing up does this full time, like content
Okay.
creation. She's more on the fashion side, but she and a lot of my other friends would always be bugging me, being like, "Oh, you should, make videos. Like your tips are really good." And again, like I'm not a professional, but it would more just be like, when everyone's getting ready or going out, or if they like couldn't do their eyeliner, like I was the person that people would FaceTime or like ask for product racks or stuff like that, just because
Right.
I genuinely loved it so much. And people kept bugging me to do it, but I was just like, oh, like, I don't know, that's not me. Like, I was also scared, it is scary to like talk to the camera and put yourself out there. But I think just kind of seeing like so many people do such cool things on social media, and like even the thought of like getting sent stuff or like going to events was just like so exciting to me because I love beauty so much that after them nagging me for long enough and seeing that like I think it was also seeing a lot of people through COVID that like weren't anybody like pre-existing. Like I kind of always had this idea that you had to like have a pre-existing
Right.
platform or kind of like be somewhat famous to like make it on social media.
Yes.
And then COVID kind of proved to me that like anyone could do that. And so I think those together, like my friends just bugging me. And then I was like, okay, I can probably do this. Like, what do I have to lose? Like, worst thing is I post TikToks and it goes nowhere. And then I
Yeah.
just, whatever, like,
Just
who
had fun with
cares?
it. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was a little bit hesitant to post on TikTok as well. I also started in 2021, which is like I feel like a little bit late to the game. And I've been
Yeah.
posting content on YouTube since I was 13. So I was like used to the content space, but I was always like,
Yeah.
I like the long form. And I had some friends telling me like if you make content anyways, like TikTok is where it's at, like post on TikTok. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
short form is not for me, like I was like so resistant to it. But I definitely had, and I was thinking about this the other day actually, like I had the mindset where it's like I only thought you could be like a full-time influencer or be making like a substantial amount of money off influencing if you had like millions and millions of followers. Like I never
Yeah.
thought, like until like yeah, until I honestly got on TikTok is when I was like, "Oh, like this is possible. You don't need like a million followers." So,
Yeah.
it definitely like changed my perspective. Even though I was like already creating content, it like definitely changed my perspective on it as well like during that
Yeah.
time for sure. So
Yeah.
did you ever, I guess you didn't really think like, okay, like this is going to be like necessarily like a career option for for yourself, right? But
Yeah.
do you ever think that, because I was thinking about this the other day too. Do you think that if you had started in social media like earlier, let's say like start of high school or something, let's say TikTok was like around then, right? Like, and
Yeah.
it took off the way it did for you. Do you think that it would have influenced if you went to post-secondary or not?
Um, the decision to go to post-secondary, no, I think I always would have gone to school.
Okay.
It's kind of funny because like if you, I don't know, went back to like 2015 or 2016, like I love learning. I'm the biggest nerd. Like I was always the person who cared so much about my grades.
Yeah.
Just like and not by product of like my parents or anything. Like I am just internally like expect a lot from myself and I love to learn and I do genuinely really like school.
Hmm.
So I don't think so. And that's also kind of a reason why I am doing both and like
Right.
definitely still prioritizing my career because before I started to create content, like I already had basically a job lined up for after school. Like I had
Yeah.
this internship that I was going to be doing in summer of 2022 in investment banking. And then that, granted, if you do well enough, which thankfully I did, like leads into a full-time role. So I kind of already knew that like that was going to be my path when I even like just started TikTok at all. But even if that had been like you said, like 2017, 2018 thing, I think I always would have gone to school and pursued something academically. Maybe I would have like I don't think it would have really changed it at all.
Hmm.
Because I don't think like as much as I love content and creating and makeup, like there is a really like academic side of me that I don't think I would be like necessarily fulfilled if I wasn't at least like having a business on the side or something like that. I don't think just like
Yeah.
pure content creation is like would be entirely fulfilling for me, if that
I
makes sense.
feel the exact same way with that. And like, it's crazy because sometimes I do get in the headspace where I'm like, I get really overwhelmed by everything, and I'm like, oh, I just like wish I was in school anymore, like and just doing content. But like when I do think about it,
Yeah.
I think I would go a little bit crazy if I didn't have something else. And it's nice to
Yeah.
hear that like you also experienced that because I like, my whole childhood growing up, high school, everything, like I was a huge nerd, very like academically driven as well, loved learning, all of
Yeah.
that. And I think it wasn't until like uni, like second year where I remember I got like, I don't know, my first like low mark on a test and I was having like an identity crisis because I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
if it's not good grades, like what am I doing? Like
Yeah.
now looking
Yeah.
back, I'm like, that was like so stupid to like be like anxious about that. But
No,
yeah,
I
no,
was literally the same.
it
I went to U of T in first year for computer science and
yeah,
like I got whipped into shape. Like I
yeah,
was trying
it
so hard
humbles
and
you.
like you're used to like 90s, like
Yes.
hundreds. And then I was like, and getting
Oh,
bad grades like on math too. Like math was my thing. And I was like,
same. Yeah.
oh my God, like I'm dumb. I remember like I had a breakdown with my with my dad. I was like, I've never felt stupider in my life. Like, but my mom went to U of T thankfully, and she was like, first year is literally
You're
designed
fine.
to like
Yeah.
make you drop out. Like
Yeah.
if you're passing, like you're doing better than like a lot of people. So like
Exactly.
that's the bar. Like you can't getting a 95 at U of T is in like theoretical math is just like never gonna happen. So I mean,
Yep.
unless you're a genius, but I'm not
Or
that
like,
genius.
yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. And even like, so I go to U of C um in Calgary for engineering and commerce. And
mhm.
in first year, like they say they don't, but they do like a weeding out process basically.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, like I remember coming home like my first linear algebra test, and looking back now, I think I got like a 75 on the test. I'm like, what was I crying about, But my
Yeah.
mom, I was
But
like
it feels like the
bawling
end of the
my eyes
world.
out, and my mom's like, "Are you okay? Like, what is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I did so bad." She's like, "You need to calm down. This is fine. Like, as long as you're passing at this point." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah,
But yeah, it definitely
literally.
takes a bit of an adjustment period for sure. And now like my mindset has like almost completely shifted where I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna kill myself over, like as long as like I'm
Yeah.
understanding the concepts. Like some courses too, you just gotta like get through because like they make
Yeah.
them virtually impossible. So it's like
Yeah. Mine
it's
was
fine.
discrete math. I was like a 51. Great, I'll take
You're
it.
like,
Like
perfect.
by
Yeah,
the end of the year, I was like, I just need to pass.
yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of us who kind of like rely so much on academic validation, like growing up, at one point or
Yeah.
another kind of get to that breaking point where it's like, I can't keep this up,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's unhealthy.
definitely.
Like you can't like you said, like literally U of T, I'm sure a lot of other like engineering, computer science, or just any first year programs, like especially U of T, like they admit more people than they can graduate. So like they have to
Exactly. They have
drop
to,
out.
yeah,
And you have to, it's hard to like think about that because at the end of the day, it's like I was just only thinking about my GPA, but there's a
right.
lot more factors than just like the number on the page. And you got to
Ex
like mentally get past that.
well, exactly. And even like I was thinking about this year because I was like, okay, I'm taking like 6 classes right now. So I'm like, oh, this class, like I'm kind of, not doing the best in, but then I'm like, okay, well, I'm also kind of working full time, like outside of
Yeah.
school. So it's like I can't like compare myself to like the one kid who all they do is study for this class,
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
different, that
Exactly.
doesn't take away from like the power of my brain and my abilities. It's just like, you can't always split up your energy in that
Yeah.
way. But I do want to
Totally.
ask, because you said like you did your first year at U of T in computer science, then what
Mhm.
made you kind of switch to the like finance sector of things?
Yeah, I just realized that like it was not for me. I feel like I wish that I had a bit more exposure to different, like more like specialized things in high school because I went to this arts high school called Etobicoke School of the Arts because I danced so much growing up. I went to a different middle school and then ended up transferring to that school just because it was like really close to my dance studio. Pretty much everyone from my dance studio went there. I was a dance major. Like I feel like I was almost closer to probably like pursuing dance at one point, but then it was the same thing. I was like, I need to be doing something academic.
Something,
Like I
yeah.
would go crazy. But I was like training like 40 hours a week. Like it was a
Wow.
very, very, very big part of my life. And I absolutely loved it. But so like I kind of just took like I took the basics. I was like all the maths, all the sciences, but beyond that, I didn't really take like economics or like there was no there weren't those didn't even exist at my course.
Yeah,
Like my high school was like acting for the camera. There was no
right.
electives that I could like even explore that. And I was debating between going to Queen's Commerce. Like I got in senior year. And so I was literally debating between like going to Queen's Commerce, which is where I ended up graduating from, and then U of T Comp Sci. And those are obviously very different. But it was kind of a toss-up. I ended up making the decision because I had a really good friend who was a year older than me. This is kind of confusing, but I was a year ahead in math in high school. So I did grade 12 math and grade
Mhm.
11. And so all of my friends in like my math class that I had kind of been studying with and stuff went on to university. And so it
Right.
was like kind of good for me to see like where they went
Yes.
and get a little bit of perspective after first year. But this one friend who went to U of T Comp Sci, we were like very, very similar. He was awesome. And he like we kept in touch and kept like telling me about his program. And I was kind of just like, this sounds like it would work. We were very similar and I didn't know that much. And I liked coding when I did like some intro stuff on the side. So it's like, whatever, let me just, go try this.
Mhm.
I feel like the frustrating part for me at U of T was that people thought that I left because I was like bad at it. But then when people found out like my grades and stuff, because they like are kind of available, they were like, why are you leaving this? And I was like, I don't like it. Like it
Yeah.
was kind of thing where like I can do it and I can study and
Right.
can get good grades, but like it was like I was forcing myself to
Yes.
just because like I wanted good grades. So
You had to like just put in
that
that extra bit of like effort. Like it didn't come as like naturally as something that you were more inclined
exactly.
towards. Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. And like so many kids in my class, it was also just very isolating. Like computer science and U of T in general is very like every man for themselves. There's also this weird dynamic that they like you get in first year and then you have to do something called like make post in second year. So, and this actually happened to my friend is that you go through first year and you have to get this like meet this grade average and
Yeah.
like apply to officially get into the
Right.
computer science program. So there's people that do first year like two times, like three times to like even just keep trying to get into the program, which is insane. And then I was at a point where I was like, I remember I went to a hackathon in January. This was kind of like the actual point for me because I had felt this way in first semester.
Mhm.
And to my parents' credit, they were like, it's so early, it's so overwhelming, it's so new. Like, just give yourself a
Yeah.
couple months. Because
You
week
need the
four, I was like, I
time.
need to leave.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, just wait.
Give it some
Um,
time. Yeah.
yeah, but then I went through first semester and I went to this hackathon and it was one of those, it was great. It was run by Western, I think it's called She Hacks. So it was all women and it was like a 24-hour stay up all night type of thing. But like I didn't want to code. Like I was like, no, I don't want to like parse the JSON at 3 a.m. Like I was like building the pitch, like the presentation, like the market strategy, like all the stuff behind the actual product.
Right.
And that was like where I wanted to be and where I wanted to
Okay.
focus. And so then I kind of like came out of that weekend being like, if I don't even like have the slightest inclination in an environment where like that's supposed to be your bread and butter, like as developers doing like these hackathons and stuff. I was like, this is just not for
Mhm.
me. So then I started kind of looking at my options and made the switch to Queens. But it was a lot of factors that was kind of probably like the moment that I would pinpoint in terms of
Right.
where I was like officially. But yeah, I just realized that I like technology, and that's why I'm in like tech and finance. Like I'm doing
Mhm.
technology investment banking because I like the industry and I have a bit of context, but not on like the developer side.
Right. No, for sure, and it's hard coming out of high school, like, to know, like, pinpoint exactly what you wanna do. I remember, like, when I was in grade 11, I'm like, "Okay, I like physics, I like math, I like chemistry," but I, like, wasn't really into bio. I knew I didn't wanna go into anything, like, English or social related,
Yeah.
but I always thought, like, for myself, when I thought of, like, engineering, I'm like, "Oh, like, you just, like, build bridges," and I'm like, "I don't really wanna do that." So I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll go into business," and it wasn't until, like, one of my high school teachers asked me if I'm, like, looking into engineering, and I was like, "No," and then he sent me to, like, this job shadow thing where I actually got to learn about, like, what other types of engineers other than, like, civil engineering do, and that's when I, like, kind of opened my eyes towards that, and then luckily my school offered, like, a dual, engineering and commerce program, so I
Yeah.
decided on that, but, like, if you don't, like, get exposed to it, like, it's really hard to know, and, like, luckily our first year, um, it's like a general first year engineering, so you kind of get the opportunity to try out, like, the different courses, and then at the end of the year, you basically, like what you were saying, like, you reapply for,
Yeah.
your major, so, like, I kind of
Mhm.
chose, chemical engineering because I also thought, like, well, in the future, I can kind of link that to, like, cosmetic engineering, and that will kinda help,
Totally.
help me with that,
Yeah.
but, it's hard to know, like, I know so many people who kind of do the whole degree and then they're like, "I actually don't like this at all," and I'm like, "That's tough," 'cause it like, there's no way to
Yeah.
just, like, know right out of high school what you wanna do, so
Yeah.
you really
Yeah.
have to, like, try it and figure out, so it's good that you, like, gave it the time and then kinda followed your gut and, like, if it wasn't for you,
Yeah.
like but do you often get asked, like, how you have, like, this interest for, like, finance as well as, like, makeup and creating? Because I get asked all that all the time. People
Yeah.
just can't, like, see the 2 worlds, like, together.
Yeah. Like I feel like it's funny because too in Toronto, like in fourth year when this kind of started picking up and I was like going to more events and stuff, like a lot of the people that I met, they're so nice. Like the beauty people that I've met in Toronto are absolutely lovely, but
Yes.
like they all do this full
Full
time.
time,
So they're
yeah.
like in fourth year. When I was in fourth year, they're like, "Oh yeah, so you're just gonna like move to the city?" And because I wouldn't be able to go to a lot of stuff, and I would always be like, "Oh yeah, like I had class, I had school or whatever,"
Right.
or even just coming back from Kingston. Like if it was on a Wednesday, I couldn't really go, so I'd
Yeah.
kind of go to like the Thursday to Sunday events. They were like, "Oh, then you'll be back, you'll be here, like we'll see you all the time." And I was like, no, I'm actually moving to
Yeah.
San Francisco for investment banking, and all of them, like, if you don't know anything about finance, you're like, what does that mean? I feel like the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to mind is like a bank teller, and I'm like, sure, like whatever. I don't know. Half the time I was just like, I'm working at a bank, like it's fine.
Right.
But yeah, like people are very confused, and I feel like you it makes sense like if you know me very well and kind of the backstory behind like how I got into it. Um, but yeah, I feel like I don't even know if I have a good answer for it. It's kind of a mystery, but it's really just like I love makeup and I love beauty. And it's like I would have so much fun like sending my friends little like Sephora lists and brands, or like if they tell me about a product they like it's just so fun for me. So I was like, if I can, for me it was more just the opportunity to like get in front of these brands and meet the people behind it, because I also find that really exciting, like the
Right.
product development and like that the more like business
Business
side of
side of
it
it,
was
of
very cool
course.
to me.
Mhm.
And so this like the TikTok and like content is kind of like an avenue to do that. I don't know
Absolutely.
if I like love editing videos. Like someone I have to go edit, I'm like, ugh, like not my favorite. But the making it and the talking about it, and then like the end product of like that I've built this kind of community that enables me to go meet founders and like hear about their stories is like what makes me really excited about it. So I feel like that aspect of it, like I'm very excited by like the business side of it. I wouldn't say that like and that comes through in my content. Like I'm not one of those
Right.
creators where you like look at my video and it's like, oh my God, groundbreaking like cameras. Like I'm just talking to the camera.
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, I feel the same way in that, like, I totally relate to that, and I think for a lot of people, if anything, it's, like, shocking when they hear, like, that I am in school, or last year I was, like, on a 16-month internship, so I was working full time, and
yeah.
when I'd, like, you know, a brand would be like, "Oh, can we schedule a meeting for like this time?" I'm like, "Oh, can we do it like at 12 because that's like my lunch break," you know? So they were like, "Wait, like you work full time?" It's like I don't think a lot of people like, you know, just like think of that because like
Yeah.
as you said, a lot of the people who like maybe are at like in our community of influencers are full time, right? So
Hmm.
it's not, you know, the first thing that comes to mind. And then I think for a lot of
Yeah.
people, the obvious answer is like, why don't you just do content creating full time so they can't like wrap their head around it, which
Yeah.
I want to get into that with you as well. And even like because I know a bunch of the girls like in Toronto that like you often go to events and stuff with, and they always ask me like, you know, are you gonna move here after like you're done school and stuff? And I'm like, I don't know, like, you know, and I obviously can't like just
Yeah.
leave now because I have to finish school. Like I
Yeah.
go to this
Yeah.
university, right? And they're like, can you transfer to U of T? And I'm like, I am not like going through that hassle.
Don't
Like
go to U of T.
it's
Don't go to U
fine.
of T.
Like and like also like yeah, like events are fun stuff, but like I need to finish school and like
Yeah.
prioritize that
Yeah. And
obviously.
you're so close, like
Yeah,
at this point,
exactly,
too.
like, there's no point to do that, so, yeah, and, like, I sometimes I feel a little isolated over here, but it's also, like, not really stopped me from, like, getting opportunities and stuff, so I'm like, "It's
Yeah.
fine,"
Yeah.
like, so, yeah, but I do find that it is, like, shocking for a lot of people because like and, like, on both sides of it, like, even I just spoke on a panel in Calgary the other day, and I was, like, speaking as an influencer, but then I mentioned, like, "Oh, yeah, I'm studying chemical engineering," and I saw, like, the instant, like, switch on, like, how people perceive me because they were like, "Oh, like, you're not just doing this," you know? I think people
Hmm.
definitely do respect it when it's like you can, like, handle both, and for me, like, you know, even if I do graduate and don't go into, like, industry working as an engineer, like, as you mentioned too, I don't think I would just do content full time, I'd, like, work on my business and,
Hmm.
like, do other
Hmm.
things outside of it, and, like, content is a great like, door opener, I think, so that's, like, a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
driver and just the building of community and stuff, but what is your, like, perspective, I guess, for, like, the situation where a lot of people kind of start to gain some traction, then they choose to, like, drop out of school or, like, leave their job?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I've thought about this, but I feel like sure if it was like a situation like an Alex or where you like blow up overnight and you have like millions and millions of followers, like that's kind of a no-brainer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you, she like now has the not only capital, but just ability and reach to like do whatever she wants. And like if I was in that position, I would take that and I would like start whatever
Take
business
the
I wanted or
opportunity,
like,
yeah.
use it to be like an angel investor in like things that I wanted to do. Like the money and the like and at the end of the day I don't want to pinpoint the money, but it's just like that is an aspect of it of like
Absolutely.
if I had that, like she's making whatever $1 million at 22, like if I was able to have that, I would go and take that for sure. I would not be like doing this exact path that I'm doing right now, but I would still use that to like mesh the worlds of like makeup and finance. I wouldn't just like be a creator and
Yeah.
like I even if I could just sit around and make TikToks all day and have millions of dollars come in, like I that would not be satisfying to me at all.
Right.
Like I said, I would take that money and I would start my own thing or like help people start their own things. So that's kind of like my perspective on it. But that's like what like and that's a big hurdle. That's like what it would take for me to like completely leave my career. And like
Mhm.
I mean, I've been on social media for a while now. Like it hasn't happened. It's not gonna happen. It's gonna be more of like a slow like community, and that's totally fine. Like some people just, blow up like that. And so that was kind of my thinking. People asked me that in third and fourth year, and I was like, well, if I don't like just completely go off the walls and blow up by the time I graduate, like I'm still gonna
This is
stay
my
like in my
path.
career and
Yeah.
in my school. So that was like one part of it. But yeah, I think the other part of it is I just like I love my job and the work that I do is very cool. And I know people find that insane because the hours are really insane.
Right.
But like that's kind of the name of the game in this industry, unfortunately. And like, I mean, hopefully it'll change one day and people won't be up till, all hours of the morning, but it's very cool and you get a lot of exposure and you feel like you're doing really meaningful work. And like I learn a lot and it challenges me every single day. So I just don't think there's like another field that I would be as happy in. And I don't know, just doing this like in tandem is kind of a good fit for me. I just
Mhm.
don't, that's kind of like what it would take for me to drop it. And I just don't see that happening.
Right. So I do
Like
wanna
not to
ask
be
you
like against myself, but you know what I
no, no,
mean? It's
no, but,
like
like,
I'm
I
not.
think I like your perspective because I think you're, like, very realistic about it, and the one thing that I always think of is, like, as I said, like, even if I don't go to industry after I graduate and I, like, do the content thing for a while, focus on my
Yeah.
businesses. It's like if this all disappears tomorrow, I have like a very
Mhm.
solid degree that I can like fall back on. I have like references that I can like, go back to the company I interned with or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be like, okay, now what? Like I'm not, like I
Yeah.
have kind of
And
like
like you never know. That's the other
that's the
thing is like
thing.
maybe that's just me being risk averse, but like there was a point a couple months ago where like they were going to ban TikTok in the
Yeah.
United States. And so it's like I maybe that's me again being like super risk averse, but like that's the thing. Like I'm not the other thing that I kind of forgot to talk about is like I'm not the kind of person where I can just jump on any platform and like you need immediately know who I am and you immediately
Yes.
like gain like millions of followers, like whatever. And that is what it would take for me to just go completely into content. Like if you're like an
Absolutely.
Alex Earl or a McKill or a Monet
Mhm.
McMichael or Glamzilla, where like they have these brands that are so defined that they could literally like start anything they wanted or go on any new platform and like people migrate with them.
Yeah.
Whereas
They'll
like,
be
and
recognized.
that is like what like mitigates the risk for me is
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, if TikTok's not there anymore, then like whatever. But for me, if TikTok was not there, then I would have to like start from ground, like not necessarily square one because like some people would probably recognize me, but it's not that same level of like immediate
No,
like
yeah.
migration to that person. So that's
I
kind of it.
I totally get what you mean. I don't like sometimes I don't understand how people are so comfortable with, especially because like some people too are just on like one platform. Like I do like
Yeah.
TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I do this podcast and
Yeah.
like I'm still like working on my degree because I'm like, what if, it all just like disappears, which
Yeah.
you're like, maybe it's like get betting against yourself. And it's not even that, it's just like, I think it's like looking at the reality of things. Like, yeah, as you said,
Yeah.
TikTok was almost banned. Like apps fall off all the time. Like
Yeah.
people just stop using them. So it's like you have to kind of plan. And I think the best
Mhm.
thing for any influencer to do that is doing that full time, like think of ways that you can like grow your audience maybe outside of the app itself or like use your
Yeah.
audience to build some type of business and have multiple streams of income because like
Mhm.
I just don't understand how some people can like feel so comfortable in it. Cause I'm like, how?
I
Like,
mean, more power to them sometimes. I just think maybe that's me like working in this field. Like finance is like highly risk averse. So maybe I'm
right.
like, maybe that's just me
Yeah.
and like the way that I'm wired right now. But I don't know. I do think there is a level of like planning for the future.
Mhm.
And but like you said, there's both sides to it. There's the sides that's like, why don't I just do this for a couple years and see what happens? And it could completely change your
Exactly.
life. And that's awesome. And maybe by me not doing that, that is a mistake or something, but you never know. And I think there's both sides to it. It just depends where you fall, and I fall on
Exactly.
the other one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure, and, like, I think even so last year, as I said, like, I was working, in, like, a project engineering role, and it was just, like, a typical, like, 9 to 5 job, and that
Mm,
definitely, like, shifted how I did, like, my content because, like, when you're in school, like, you're, like, studying all the time, but, like, you
mm,
can kinda build your own schedule more, so I would, like, kinda film
yeah.
all over the place, but when I was working
Mm,
this job, it's like, okay, obviously, I can't do content between, like, 8 to, like, 5 or whatever it was, right?
yeah.
And then or I'd, like, film, getting ready in the morning, which, like, I see you do that too, like, before work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then, like, my weekends were, like, mostly the time that I would, like, do content or, like, in the evening
Yeah.
sometimes, but all the time I'd get people ask me, like, "How do you balance it?" And I think the one thing I'm seeing from you is, like, the passion behind it, and and I've seen you talk about this too, it's like, if you really want something and you really love it, like, you're gonna make the time for it, so I wanna kind of, like, get into that with you and, like, get more of your
Yeah.
perspective on that because that's definitely how I feel too. It's like, well, I don't I'm the one choosing to, like, do both these things, and yeah, it's stressful, and it's sometimes I'm like, "What?" I watched your video recently where you said, like, "Why am I doing this?" Like, you feel, like, overwhelmed sometimes, but you have to realize, like, I know you have this perspective because that's why I wanna talk to you about this, is just the fact that, like, you're choosing it for a reason, and sometimes it does get hard,
Mhm.
but just reminding yourself, like, "Okay, why am I doing this?" So I
Yeah.
wanna get your whole, like, perspective on that.
Yeah. I think like people ask me that too because like our field, our hours are not realistic. Like I like our like we work like 100 hours a week. So it's like I only have Saturdays sometimes, usually to myself.
Yeah.
And like Monday to Friday, like I'm working from like 9 to like anywhere from 2, 3, 4 plus in the morning, which
Wow.
is insane. Um, but so that makes it very difficult to fit in content. And that's something that I am working on.
Mhm.
But like I'm trying to give myself a little bit of grace because it's like I have been putting pressure on myself to be like, oh, like, because in school, like I had so much more capacity because, like you
Yeah.
said, like I can build my own schedule and like I wasn't making myself stay up till 4 in the morning
Yeah.
studying. So, yeah, there was definitely like more time there, but it's amazing. Like, and maybe this is bad, but like every minute truly counts. And it's amazing like
Yes.
how much time you can find. Like, I find that the busier that I get, like, not like it's not
The
even
more
like
time you
really about
have.
being creative. Yeah, it's like the
Yeah.
more like intentional you become with your time.
Mhm.
And like I've just found, I mean, like everyone does this, or I'm sure a lot of people do, like blocking out your time, like planning. Like I will spend my Saturdays like planning my week ahead. And like if there's usually like on the content side, like I will just batch film everything on Saturdays
Yeah.
because like I never know what my week is going to entail. And there's some weeks where like Monday through Friday and Sunday, I have no time.
Yeah.
And then there's some days where like my mornings are a little bit slower and I can film like I get ready with me. But like pretty much all of my content at this point is batched, which makes it hard to like because I feel like part of my brand and what I was doing in school too a little bit is like letting people in on my life, but it's very, very hard to do that in real time when like I only get these buckets of like 1 day a week to film. So sometimes it's like telling stories that like would
Mhm.
seem like they would be being told on a weekday, like on a Saturday. And like that's just like they're still my life and they're still my stories, but it's like I like change my shirt and pretend it's like another day because like I have to film all in one day.
Absolutely.
And that's totally fine, but it's definitely been an adjustment from school. But yeah, I feel like to your point of just like how I balance it all, it's like I could just not film and just let it kind of whittle away, but I do really enjoy it. And I feel like the days where or the weeks where like I don't film like all the time or I'm not doing anything, like when I do sit down and do it, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is really
This is
fun and I
why.
really like
Yeah.
this. And yeah. So I think like and that's something that I've seen like on my platform in the last couple of months. I've definitely been, a little bit less volume, like hasn't been as consistent in terms of like my story and everything, just because I've like been going through like a big shift.
Yeah,
But I think
absolutely.
once it levels out a bit more, like I'm starting to get a little bit more of like into a cadence of when I can
Mhm.
film and when I can't. But yeah, you'd be amazed where it fits in.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I say that all the time to people, like the busier you are, like the more time you have, because as you said, like you're just more
Mhm.
intentional with it, right? Like, yeah, my weekends are like at least the like morning to afternoon part of it, it's like dedicated to content because like that's
Mhm.
when I can like film these interviews, for example, or
Yeah.
do my other stuff. And sometimes it's like I'm way behind on like a trend or whatever because like it happened early in the week, but it's just what
Yeah,
you
like
gotta
I
do.
can't do real-time trends
Yeah,
anymore. I've just
no.
given up. I've accepted that.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like the people will get it when it comes. Like that's all it is. But yeah,
Yeah.
you just have to really like you find the time. And I think even like I would, if I film in the morning getting ready for like school or work or whatever, and then while I'm like transiting to school, I'll edit the video. Like you find those
Yeah.
moments of time. And I think just as you said, like being more intentional with your time, like I could sit on the bus or the train and just like listen to music, but I'll spend that
Yeah.
time editing, right? Because that's the only time I
Like that's
have
what I do too.
during the
Like
day.
when I'm walking to work, I'll be like
Yeah.
posting.
Yeah.
People are like, when do you post? I'm like, I post when I walk from my house
Yeah.
to the office. Like
Yeah.
that's when I post. And then I close the app and I don't look at it all day because I'm
Exactly.
like at work. But
That's
that's like
it.
my
Yeah.
pocket of time to post. And yeah, it's like whereas like I could just walk and like call a friend or like listen to a podcast or whatever. And sometimes I do, but
Mhm.
like that's
Not
kind of where you fit it
always.
in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I would always post my videos like during my lunch break at work, like which
Yeah,
worked out because like I
exactly.
post during that time, like it's like the best time to post anyway. So I'm like, perfect. But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do just find the time for it. And some weeks, as you said, like get busier and you can't film as much. And it's like when you do have a couple minutes to spare, it's like, oh, I can film something real quick here and
Yeah.
there. So you just find the time. And I think the one part where people maybe struggle to see that is because they don't actually, like, fully love it,
Mhm.
I think,
Yeah.
because, I think in any space, like, if you aren't fully, like, passionate about it, like, you're not gonna find the time for it because you're just gonna put it off and it's gonna feel like a chore, right?
Yeah.
And like you said,
Well,
like, I'm
like
not always in love with editing, like, I'm like, "Oh, I have to like, it's not always like, "Can't wait to edit this video," but, like,
yeah,
the
it's not
overall
my favorite.
picture, like, I love it more than, like, it feels like a chore, like, I think if it felt like a chore, I wouldn't be doing this to myself, obviously.
Yeah, and like I feel like people sometimes draw the parallel of like, oh, you're basically working like a part-time job. And I'm like, sort of. But like if I had like an actual part-time job, like I wouldn't do it because I like wouldn't find
Yeah,
the time to like do it if I didn't like love it. Like if it was like a part-time job of like, I don't know, like cleaning toilets, like I would not make the time.
yeah. Well, and
I'd be like, oh,
also
I'm too
like
busy.
thing with content that like makes it like I'm so blessed every day to even, and I'm sure you feel this way too, like be able to do this because it is so flexible. Like it's
Hmm.
not like you have to like work 8 hours a day or like with another part-time job, you have to be there for 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever your
Yeah.
shift is. Like you can spend 30 minutes today on a video, like an hour tomorrow, like,
Hmm.
you know, it's really
Yeah.
flexible, and that's like the beautiful thing of it.
Hmm.
And I think that's the only way you are able to, and like myself as
Yeah.
well, like balance, a full-time thing with content because you just can like squeeze it in
Yeah.
whenever you have the time. Okay, I kind of want to switch gears a little bit because I think a huge debate on social media is the whole debate of like, is influencing actually hard? Is it like as hard, harder than like a traditional job? I have like my thoughts on this because like I was working, in an engineering role and doing content full time at the same time. So I'm like, I have my opinion on this, but I really want to hear it from someone else because it's really
Yeah.
nice, honestly, to just like talk to someone else who like in a lot of ways can relate to how I feel because I feel like I
Yeah.
never have anyone to talk to about this stuff. So I'm so excited to talk to you about this. But like, what is your opinion on this? Like,
Oh God.
yeah.
Okay. I feel like I am probably a good case study in
Hmm.
the sense that like the job, like investment banking as an analyst, is about as corporate as it gets. Like
Yeah.
it's about as taking over your life, like so much time, like so much like 100-hour work week. Like that is like the pinnacle of corporate America. And then we
Yes.
have influencing, which is like the complete opposite. So, and I feel like the discussion around it too, and like at least the frustrations from what I'm seeing is like people being like, these influencers like don't have real jobs, they don't understand, blah blah blah.
Right.
And like I do, like
Hmm.
I really do. That being said, caveat, I'm very fortunate to have even like gotten that role. Like investment banking and finance and this whole industry is so competitive and so crazy. Like I even know that like within that, that is also a big privilege. So I kind of have these two jobs that are like I'm very grateful for, but very, very different.
Hmm.
And like,
Like night and day.
I feel like influencers are probably going to come for me for saying this, but like, it's not hard. Like in my opinion, on the time side, like
Yes.
I think on the time and on the flexibility side, like you don't realize like how flexible it is, and like there are so many privileges of this job, like the fact that you get sent stuff for free, like beauty and personal care and all that stuff, like you're literally getting expenses cut out of your life that like people will like not buy makeup or not buy shampoo or not buy things like new things because it's like they're not making enough
So
money, like we're in a
expensive.
recession
Yeah.
right now, so it's like the fact that, and like if you expand your brand, like you can get clothes for free, like pots, like literally at this point you can get set anything for
Anything.
free
Yep.
if you like craft your content around it. So that is such a blessing and such a privilege. Like whatever corporate job you get into, like that's not the reality.
No.
So like that's one aspect of it that I think people don't necessarily like recognize enough and like realize how lucky that is. Another aspect of it is like tax. Like if you have your content in your home, like you can like write off your rent, and not write off, but like you can use it. Like
Yeah.
there's like a significant tax
Your
benefit to
phone,
like your
laptop,
expenses.
everything.
Yeah, because if you can prove, and it is because, and people always say like, oh, I'm like online 24/7, like my work is my life. And I'm like, if you like actually like break down the components of it and like are smart with your taxes, like there's also a huge benefit there
Mhm.
that like I can't like, like expense my whatever or like take it as like a business expense because like I have my office, and like that's not gonna fly with the
Yep.
IRS.
Or even like
So
things like if you're going on like a brand trip, let's say, and like you're getting like a bunch of outfits for like that trip,
mhm,
like and making content around those outfits, like there is so much you can like look into expensing. You're so right with that. And I think
mhm,
no, like think of it like I think for a lot of influencers, like think of it as like a regular like benefits package basically that you would get like at a job.
yeah,
Like all the PR and stuff, like yeah, it's not
yeah,
like cash in your hand, but it's like these
yeah,
products are hella expensive, so it adds up.
yeah. Yeah, so like I think those aspects of it, not that that makes the job any easier, but like I think those are grossly overlooked. I think the thing that I will say is I do sympathize and I understand. I think if we're talking about two separate things, like the one side being like just the logistics aspect of it, like when you create content, how you create
Mhm.
content, reaching out to brands, like brand deals, all that stuff, like be completely honest, not rocket science. Like it's a huge privilege. It's an awesome thing. It's super exciting. Like the pay is great. Like I don't really have a lot of sympathy for like the logistics side of it. What I will say is like, I think if you do this only 24/7, there is an aspect of like your own mental health
Yeah.
that this job does really take a toll. So I think there's two sides to it. I think like the what you are actually doing and the how you are doing it, it's insanely flexible. You get so much, and like for what you put in, you get so much out of it. And I think it's there's not a lot of hardships that I can really sympathize with there. But I will say, like, on the mental side, like the aspect of like being on call 24/7, like there's a lot of corporate jobs that like they expect you to pick up and like email you back. So like I don't even know if I like really like yes and no into that. Like there's not a lot of jobs don't like really let you, like people are like, oh, in other jobs you can just log off. But like that's not the case for me. Like someone could call me whenever and like I
Yeah.
have to be available. So like not really on that aspect, but like if you're like always looking at yourself 24/7, and like I even found this in school, like you like are so hard on yourself about like the views that you're getting and like what you're putting into your content, and you're not seeing that out of it, like that mentally I think does actually really take a toll. And I think that's the hard aspect of this
Yeah.
job. The logistics side, like, and maybe I'll get hate for saying that, like I don't know, like it's just, I think because I have like just this complete parallel that like
Right.
it's not really, to me I think it's more like the you're only working for yourself, like you're putting so much pressure on yourself. Like I don't really love the idea of like looking at myself 24/7. Like that is
Mhm.
like the tough part of the job that like you have to balance for me, which is like totally valid. Just like on the other side, sometimes I'm like, you can kind of work whenever you want from
Yeah.
wherever you want and like get a lot of money and free shit. Like,
It's yeah,
but yeah.
and I get the frustration on I think both ends of it, like and I think as you said, like, in a way we're the perfect candidates to kind of see it's like we've done both, like, we can
Yeah.
kind of compare it and not every, like, like, your industry, like, I'm sure you've had your own personal experiences compared to, like, me, but it's like it does give us at least a more, like, round perspective on both worlds, which not a lot of people,
Yeah.
as you said, get the privilege to have, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
too, which is an important aspect of it. But I think also, like, in terms of the mental health with influencing, it's the fact and of course, with any job, like, you never know what the future will bring, but with
Mhm.
influencing, like, it is very, like, unstable, I would say, in
Yeah.
terms of, like, financial income. Like, I couldn't really imagine, like, relying completely, like,
Yeah.
just on brand deals because it's like you can go months without getting a deal, and then 1 month you get, like, 10. Like, you never know when your next, like,
Mhm.
opportunity is gonna come. So
Mhm.
and then, like, even with, like, payments, like, some payments are, like, 90 days out, like, so it's like you never
I
or, like,
don't think
there's
I've ever been paid on time.
oh,
Like,
ever,
never.
ever. It's always
And I'm
past
like,
due.
I know why you're doing this. I'm like, I understand your cash cycle. I understand why you're trying to be net 90, but like net 45, like I need to pay my bills.
Please, like, and why am I always chasing these brands down, like, being like, "Hello? Like, that invoice I sent
Yeah.
you 5 months ago, are we,
I've
working?"
literally gotten to the point where I've had to like almost serve people and be like, my dad's a lawyer, and I was like, he was like, oh, you can send them this like letter. And so I like just even alluded to the fact that I would immediately got a check. I was
Yeah.
like, I shouldn't have to like threaten you
No.
to pay me.
I find it funny too when I'll, like, email, like, months later, be like, "Oh, like, just checking in on this," and they're like, "Well, this, like, line, the, invoice, can you, like, change the address here?" And I'm like, "Why didn't you ask me this 5 months ago when I sent it?" But anyways, again,
I
like, influencers being annoying, complaining about random shit, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, that
But it
part of
is,
it
but that is, I think, is a valid concern because, like, if
yes,
you
you don't
were,
know when
oh,
it's gonna come.
yeah, and you don't know, and if you were relying on it to like pay your rent, like your landlord isn't going to care if a brand forgot to pay you.
No,
Like, you have to pay it. So, like, I
exactly.
actually think that that is like that's probably the hard, like on the logistics side, that is something that I would
Mhm.
say is actually like very hard and very stressful and very difficult. Is like these brands internally, like not to put them on blast, but like so unprofessional a lot of times and so disrespectful of like your time and just like your context. Like I've like had to write emails being like, this has taken up X amount of time. Like, please respect my time and like do what you said you would do, like
Mhm.
when you said you would do it. And like I just don't understand. I don't know where that like aspect comes from in terms of like just because like when you think these influencer like marketing agencies or just like marketing arms of companies, this is obviously a gross generalization. And there's tons of brands that I've worked with that are great and super
Yes,
nice and super professional and
send the payment
respectful.
on time and all that,
But
yeah.
more often than I expected to, and way more often than like in my industry, like people are just so like won't respond. Like you have to chase them unnecessarily for things, like just so disrespectful, like so I don't know. And I don't know if that stems from just the fact that like a lot of influencers and people in this space are young. So they just think that you like don't know how to conduct yourself in a business environment and
I think
like can be
so.
taken advantage of. I
Yeah.
think that is where it stems from. But like, and I've even had brands like really completely switch the way they treat me when like
Mm,
I've had to spell it out for them, be like, hi, I work at an investment bank. I work X hours. I'm not getting on the phone with you. Like you can call me on a Saturday, but like send me your questions over email and
yeah.
I will respond in line. And they're like, what? And like this is like such a like
Yeah.
inefficient and like ineffective way of doing things. And then they like start talking to me like a normal business person. I'm like,
Right.
we're still conducting business. It's not like TTYL bestie, like get you your money later. I'm like, oh my God, like let's just,
Absolutely.
it's
No,
frustrating. And
I get that too. Like sometimes I've had experiences when, like it'll take longer to like send feedback or whatever on a
yeah,
draft, and they're like, "Oh, can you send us like the new content like by 5 p.m. today?" And I'm like, "Actually, like I'm in school till 5. Like I'm in lecture, like I live like an hour away from the university. Like I can do it tonight once I'm back from school, or like when I was working, like once I'm done work." And that shift, I do see it too because they're like, "Oh, like
yeah,
you have other stuff going on, like,
yeah,
and I told them, like, I can meet during my lunch, after
yeah,
5 PM, which most people don't wanna do, or the weekend. Like, that is all I have.
yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
don't have any other time to, like I physically can't meet you, like,
yeah.
on a call, but it's just, like, part of it, and I think that definitely can add to the mental stress, like, if, like, I know when I was working,
Totally.
like, full time, it was nice because like, I had that, like, biweekly check always coming in, and then, like, when
Hmm.
the influencing money would come, it's like I wasn't as stressed about, like, it being, like obviously, like, it's annoying when, like, payments are late, but it, like, wasn't as a
Yeah,
big stress because like, I already have this, like, very stable, like, biweekly check coming in from my
yeah,
other
yeah,
job. But I totally get, like, if you're doing this full time, like, that is totally something that will, like,
yeah,
be definitely stressful, and I think that is, like, something that lots of people who aren't on the influencer side definitely overlook when they are, like, judging an influencer. But then on the
yeah,
influencer side, I think too, like I think the difference is too I've seen at least the difference, between influencers who have experience working, like, in a corporate job, or even, like even really any job, like, before like, full-time before,
yeah.
or even just doing school or something, like, else other than influencing before switching to influencing, because I think they have, like, a different perspective on it, and they do kind of
Hmm.
value the freedom of time
Hmm.
that influencing can bring. Um,
Yeah,
because yeah, like it's so different when you are like, and they say like, yeah, you can't clock in and out, but it's like you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to commute to work. You
you
don't
don't
like
have to clock in or out.
you're
Like,
you're not there. Like no one's telling you like you have to work all day. Like if you don't want to film today, like you don't have to
yeah,
film today. You know
like you
what
can
I
go on
mean?
vacation whenever you want. You
Yeah.
can
Film from anywhere in the
do,
world. Yeah.
yeah, you don't even have to take vacation. You could just like go to Thailand and probably like get great views because you're like on this sick vacation. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's definitely like an I saw this video like roasting influencers like literally a couple hours ago, and the guy was like, realistically, like you took, a minute to post the video, and then the next 3 hours you're just like refreshing the analytics, and like it's really funny because I was like, oh my gosh. But honestly, yeah, like you said, having something else is nice because you post the video and then you like don't look at it,
Mhm.
until you're like back on the app like later in the evening or the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Like
it,
sometimes I'll forget. I'll post and then like I have like my phone when I'm at work, it's on like work notifications. So I only get like my phone, my messages, like my email. And so like I don't even get like notifications throughout the day. And then sometimes I forget and I'll like be going to bed and then I'll like go on my phone. I'm like, oh, I posted
Yeah.
that earlier.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But it's kinda nice because I do think sometimes, like, even I find, like, when on the weekend when I'm not, like, when I wasn't working and stuff, like, having the ability to be online, like, the whole day
Yeah.
is like, so taxing for your mental health. Like, I felt like
Yeah.
you feel drained in, like, a different type of way. So, like, I get that
Yeah.
side of it.
And that's
And
the part that I mean is like the mental aspect, I think is the
mhm,
hard part of the job. Like the logistics, aside from chasing people for payments, is like so much flexibility and
mhm.
whatever. But yeah, I think like like being because you're like, I don't know, at least for me, like it's like you're judging yourself almost. Like I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, like I see all these other like if you're just scrolling online, I'm like,
the
and the
comparison.
way that I like use social media now because of this is like every video that I see or something I'm like thinking about like, oh, like that was a really good idea. Like what
What
should
can
like
I
my
do?
like it's always
Yeah,
like content planning. And so it's
exactly.
like it's not even like a break for you. It's like a
No.
research.
Yes, yes, that's exactly how I feel when I go on social media as well, and I think the one thing that does maybe bother me is when people, like, they see a video I posted, they're like, "Oh, like, it's a 30-second video, so, like, it took you, like, a couple minutes to make," and I think that side of
Oh
it isn't
yeah.
understood all the time too, because especially if
Yeah.
it's, like, a branded video, it's actually, like, weeks of back and forth of, like,
Like months
posting. Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly. So, like, that's the part that I don't think some people, like, on the other side of things, like, think about, or even
Yeah,
I know when
yeah,
I've gone on brand trips, like, people at my engineering job would be like, "So the brand just, like, paid for your flight?" And I'm like, "You have to look at it, like, as, like, it is a business transaction, like, they're not just bringing me,
yeah,
like, for the fun of it, like, they know I'm gonna be posting content, like, like." And I
yeah,
explained to them, like,
yeah,
when we go on a site trip here at, like, the engineering company I was working at, like, does the company make you pay for your flight? They're like, "No." And I'm like, "Exactly, like, it's the same thing, it's just
yeah, yeah,
different where, like, these influencer brand trips are very lavish and kind of crazy sometimes and, like, over the top? So, obviously, like, it's
yeah,
such a privilege and, like, so cool that I can even do that with this job, but I do think, like, it's nice to be able to, like, explain to, like, the one side and the
yeah,
other what kind of goes on
yeah,
and what parts of it you should be super grateful for and what parts are like,
yeah.
"This is still like a business."
But even with those trips, it's like, think about they're inviting 10 to 15 people, they're spending X amount of money, like they're spending less than they would to get all of you to individually make 10 TikToks each or 10
Exactly.
posts each. So
Mhm.
it's like they're like from their perspective, it's like just about return on investment. Like they can just spend, I don't know, whatever, a couple hundred grand
Mhm.
on this trip. And yes, that's a lot of money, but it's less than it would to get all of those posts. And it's like in this fun environment, it's like a great setting. It's like
Mhm.
brand trips are just like an extended commercial. Like
Yes.
they get this perfect
Where it's like
setting, this perfect,
multi-day, yeah.
and you're all together. Like instead of getting this like multi-day big excessive shoot with all these like whatever, it's less expensive, probably more fun,
Mhm.
more organic, which is like what consumers
People
want
wanna see, yep.
nowadays. So it's like actually quite ingenious. And yes, to your point, it's a privilege, but it's like you're not. I think the other thing too is that, and something that I didn't touch on earlier in terms of like this job being difficult is like it's a lot of, and people ask me like, oh, like that's crazy, you can get paid like a couple $1,000s like do a video, and it's like yes, but it's almost like it's kind of similar in finance in the sense that like you do a lot of this like client service stuff and it's all like
Mhm.
free, and then when you do a deal, that's when you get the like millions and
Yes,
millions of dollars as a fee. And that's how it works
exactly.
like in finance and in consulting and like in all these things. It's the same thing with influencing. It's like you,
Absolutely.
in order to put yourself in a position to get a brand deal, you have to like day by day maintain your platform and like work for
For
free.
free, yeah.
And then you get those opportunities
Mhm.
once in a while to participate in a campaign. And it's like quite literally the same parallel in investment banking with
Yeah.
like client service. And then you like they want you to do their M&A, but it's like everything leading up to that point is free and relationship building. And that's the exact same thing with influencing. It's like I'm posting all this free content for this brand. So then when they have a campaign, like they want me.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
it's like if you actually like average the, because people are like, oh, it takes you like 5 hours to film this video and then you like get like X amount of money. But it's like it's not just that time that I spent filming that campaign. It's like everything leading
Everything.
up to it. So
Absolutely.
like I don't even know how much you would actually be making hourly if you like think about it that way. But I think like the monetary aspect, like yes, still great money and whatever, but I
Mhm.
think it's like a little bit more complicated than just like, oh, it took you 5 hours to make this brand deal and then you're making like $3,000. It's like there was so much like runway leading up to that
Yeah.
point.
No,
So
and that's the thing, that's why I'm very, like, hesitant to, like, even talk about, like, money or how much I get paid per campaign with people outside
yeah,
of this industry because, like, when people hear a number, it's like, "Oh, you got paid X amount for one video." Then they all of a sudden do the math of, like, "So you post a video every day, you're making that every day." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. Like, this might be one like, you might be getting one brand deal a month. This is, like, you're getting
yeah,
great money, but it's like, think of that like it's your one payment for that month and you're still working every day,
yeah,
posting content every day." So, like, that's
yeah,
why I'm hesitant to talk, like, money with people outside the influencer industry because 'cause I'm like, it can
yeah,
be very, like, taken out of proportion real, real quick. But with that, I did
yeah.
wanna ask you, like, do you think influencers are overpaid?
Mm, yeah. Like in some ways. Like ugh, it I don't think it's a yes or no question, but if you think about like not only the money, but like how like I said, all the other like fringe
Yeah.
benefits, like it's lucrative. It very is. Like I and it depends, like some verticals are more like lucrative than others in terms of like lifestyle versus beauty versus whatever. And like I
Yeah.
don't know what like a food blogger makes, so I can't really speak to that.
But in the beauty industry, like, I think what the beauty industry is one of the more extreme in terms of, like, monetary and also gifting and, like, opportunities.
Yeah. And like I don't know if it's like necessarily overpaid, but it's a well-paying job. Like
Yeah.
it's more than your average job. So it's like, I don't know. I think like maybe I retract my initial yes, but like in terms of, I mean, it's the same thing. It's like there's plenty of jobs like in finance where it's like if you're in banking versus in like retail or like the corporate banking or investment banking, like there's different pay scales to
Mhm.
each of those. Like in the beauty industry, like influencing is on the higher end of the scale. And like, does that mean you're overpaid? I don't know. Like a lot of people probably think that bankers are overpaid, but like it's it's kind of relative.
Mhm.
I do think that rates have come down a lot. Like I've seen in the last year, like brands are really cutting their budgets. So I think there's kind of a correction within at least beauty. Because like I'm getting quoted the same rates that I was like, or like getting pushed back to like when I've raised my rates over the year because my platform has grown over the
Yep.
years, but people are still wanting to work with me at the same rates that they did a year ago. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But they're like, there's been a lot of deals that I've walked away from just because it's like extreme lowballing. And I don't know if that's just like within Canada. But I definitely have seen somewhat of a correction. So like I don't know if it's a yes or no answer, but like I think the thing that is frustrating people is like you got to acknowledge that you're paid well as an
Mhm.
influencer. Like it's not overpaid or underpaid. Like you're not underpaid for sure, but like I don't know, like and that's like the thing is that there's no like precedent for this. There's no like influencing in 1990 versus today. Like,
Yeah.
this is a job that was just created. So it's like I can't say if it's you're overpaid
Mhm. Well, I think
for
underpayment
what you're doing,
happens.
but like you're
Yeah.
paid well.
No, and I agree, like, it is a
Sorry.
very well-paid industry, and I think the one context that underpaying can happen, and as I know, like, even for myself, because I wasn't exposed to anybody else, like, in this industry at, like,
Oh
this
yeah,
level of
like
growth,
between each other, totally.
I was, like, like, now looking back, I'm like, I was getting, like, scammed. Like, basically every brand deal I was doing for, like, no money, and then when
Yeah.
I met a bunch of influencers, like, that, like, are kind of in your circle in Toronto, and they were telling me their rates, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, what?" And I didn't like,
Yeah.
I could not believe how, like, lowballed I was being, but, like, I just didn't know because I like, that's just what I was charging because like,
There's
I was
like
like,
zero pay
"Ze"
transparency
exactly,
whatsoever.
exactly. So now, like, I definitely think it's really important that influencers do talk to each other, especially because like, one person can make 10 times what another person with, like, the same following on the same campaign just because one person knew to, like, ask for that and one person didn't, you know? So but I think, like, overall, like, if it's being discussed and, we look at, like, the industry as a whole, like, I do agree with you, like, it is a very well-paid industry, and I think at the end of the day, like, it is a very, like, privileged job. Are there difficulties? Yes.
Mhm.
Are there things that, like, can make you stress? Absolutely, that's any job, but, like, all in all, like, it's a very cool position to be in that, like, I don't think
Yeah.
anyone should, like, take for granted, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think it's like something that would probably bridge the frustration with like the general public is just like the like acknowledging it. It's like
Yeah.
there are plenty of jobs too, like being a CEO or being like a huge executive at a corporate company. It's like, are they overpaid? I don't know. Like they're making millions of dollars. Like no one really like argues about if they're
Yeah.
overpaid. Like it's well known that like if you start a company or like you're the CEO of something, you're making millions.
Yeah.
But like you don't get CEOs online being like, my life is so hard. Like there are difficulties to every job and every part of life.
Absolutely.
Like being, if you want to take that example, like an executive, you're in charge of all these people, like you don't get to log off, like that is your firm that you're running, like any problem is your problem, like but you're paid well, you're compensated well, and like you have a great life. And
Mhm.
like I think people just need to acknowledge that. Like, yes, there are hardships to influencing, and I think it's just easy to like log on when you're frustrated and be like, oh my God, my life is so hard. Whereas like a CEO is like not gonna do that. Like
Yeah.
they don't have TikTok and they're not doing it. So there's a
Yeah.
little bit more of like a public facing aspect. I mean, there obviously is, but like more like public voicing of people's frustrations that just like probably goes behind closed doors in other jobs.
Oh, yeah.
But I just think people need to acknowledge that it's like overpaid, like don't know, like that's not really something that anyone can answer because it also varies in terms of like how much, like you said, how much you put into your platform, like kind of for free on the daily. So it's like on an hourly basis, maybe you're not like actually that overpaid, or
Mhm.
like you're not like you're making kind of the same that someone would as like, being an executive in some
Yeah.
sort of company. But I think people just need to acknowledge that like, yeah, it's a great job. You get these great benefits and like you do really cool things. And like the aspect that yes, you're working, but like you are doing something that you love. Like barely
Absolutely.
anyone can say that. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people are like, even if they're in these really well-paying jobs, like in companies, like if they're like partners at these firms, like sometimes that like if they were told that they had to do that for free, like they probably wouldn't. Whereas
Wouldn't
like a
do
lot
it.
of people like would do this for free
Well,
because
that's
they
where it
genuinely
started.
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I've
So
been doing this for 9 years, and if I stop making money tomorrow, I'd probably still post online because I love it. Like, that's the biggest,
exactly.
like, differentiator,
Yeah.
and whenever you can turn, like, a pure hobby passion into, like, something that you can make an income from, like, that is just so cool, you know?
Yeah.
So,
So I feel like people just need to like acknowledge that and be a little bit more like sensitive to the fact that a lot of their followers are people who are probably working these jobs that they don't enjoy and like
yeah.
they don't have these crazy benefits, and then they see you complain and they're like, what the
Well,
hell? Like, blah,
how
blah,
can
blah.
you
And like
complain? Yeah,
exactly, there's
absolutely. It's just
obviously such a more
perspective, yeah.
complicated thing, but I think people need to be a little bit more sensitive to the context of what they're putting out there because like their lives are pretty great.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Well, Rachel, it was so nice talking to you about all this because, like, sometimes I feel, like, so alone in this because 'cause I'll, like, talk to my friends at school or, like, people I work with, and they're like they I can, talk about work and stuff with them, but they don't understand this other side of things, and then a lot of the
yeah.
influencers I talk to, like, aren't, doing another thing on the side, so it was honestly so nice just, like, talk to someone who, like, maybe shares, some of the same, like, perspectives I have and,
Yeah,
in
totally.
that Hannah Montana double life, which I love. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sometimes it really does, but everyone at my work knows about it and they
Yeah.
like it. So, I mean, sometimes I'll bring in free stuff, so
Yeah,
it
yeah.
works for everyone involved.
Exactly, exactly. No, people love it. I remember, like, my manager at my engineering job, he came to me one day and he was, like, I don't know, in his, like, 50s, and he's like, "So, I went home the other day and my, like, daughter was watching you on her phone." And he's like, "I didn't realize people, like, knew you like that." Like, he was so confused by it, and I was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's the same way. Like everyone in my office knows. But I don't know. I joke like sometimes people bring it up. Like my friend the other day was like, I was like hanging out with my girlfriend, and you were just like, I heard your voice, and I was like, why does it sound so familiar? And then
Right.
he was like, you were just on her phone, and I was like,
Uh, great.
but like I always joke, I'm like, yeah, she's my alter ego. I'm like, I don't know her at work. Like
Right, right. No,
people will
seriously.
make jokes. I'm like, who's that?
Yeah,
Not
you
me.
you turn on, like, your different personality. So good. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so
literally.
much for coming on to Loud Talk with Lavi. I'll have all of, Rachel's
Yeah.
socials down below in the description if you're watching this episode on YouTube, and if you're tuning in on Spotify, Apple, or any other streaming service, you can also check the notes of this podcast for the YouTube version as well as Rachel's socials. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Loud Talk. I will see you next Sunday at 7 a.m. MST. And remember to tell yourself something you love about your skin today, and don't forget to break down the walls of beauty standards one flaw at a time. Thank you, Rachel, for joining me today. Bye,
Of course. Thanks
everyone.
for having me.